The End, Part 2. Silence really can be your friend, if you can stand it. Most people can't. He continued, I was supposed to see this therapist, but he's a joke. I travel all the time, so it's too difficult. It doesn't help. None of it does. He ran his hands through his hair like he might pull it out. What I really like, more than anything, is to be left alone. He shrugged, now staring off into space. Every doctor has a different opinion. They say I'm bipolar, borderline narcissistic personality disorder, depressed, anxiety, I have social phobias. I've been diagnosed with a lot of things, but they don't really know. Doctors think they're so smart, but they don't know anything. They don't know anything about me. Now he was breathing hard, like he'd been running a race. I'd never heard Dad say this many words in my whole life. That's why I left in the first place, years ago. You know, your mom. She could handle everything. A job, a house, kids. Nothing stressed her out. She didn't need me, so I disappeared. Your mom divorced me. She had custody of you kids. She seemed happier that way. He smiled. Your mom could rule the world. I held my breath. He was right. Mom was fearless. I still don't trust myself, he said. Not yet. I promise you, when they found me, I was on my way back to get you. I swear, I was driving back to the gas station to get you. You were driving back to get us after 2 days? You thought we'd still be sitting there waiting for you? I couldn't listen to another word. Dad's bloodshot eyes filled with tears. I know. I need help, he said. The metal table wobbled. One leg was shorter than the others. I'll get help, Dad said. Maybe it will work this time. Did he think I was an idiot? I had a brain, a cranium that actually worked very well. Who would leave their own children? I mean, some animals did it, but we were not animals. We were humans. Humans knew better. You left us, I said. Not in a good place. Not in a safe place. At a gas station. You knew you needed help. You could have called Julie. I know. I'm sorry. I wasn't in my right mind. It wasn't me. I wanted the tectonics to go away forever. Tears ran down my face. It was you. We loved you. We really tried. You hurt Billy, and you left us to dry up and blow away. You left us like we were trash. It wasn't me, he whispered. And so I laid my head on the table and cried like a baby. I cried and cried until I felt really dehydrated. Then I took a sip from the water bottle that sat on the table. Dad said, I know. I screwed up, but it wasn't my fault. It wasn't me. He stared at the table, his hands still shaking. After a while, all I could hear was my own breathing. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Dad said. And right there, sitting at that table, I made some important observations. First, I realized I was all cried out. Second, Dad wasn't really back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Third, it didn't matter what he said about what had happened. All that mattered is what I told myself. And I told myself then that I was better than this. My conclusion, I'd create a new pod, a strong one, something filled with Billy and me and love. The shaking inside me quieted. I sat up and looked at him. This is how I felt. 1, tired. 2, relieved. 3, sort of hungry. This is what I noticed. 1, the tectonics were gone. 2, Dad looked old and sad. 3, I was ready to go back to Pirate Doctor's hospital to see Billy. They told me Julie's coming, said Dad. I nodded. That's good. The doctor came to see me this morning. But I have to see a court psychologist. Pirate Doctor's face floated in my brain. And a judge. They'll decide what's going to happen next. Okay, I said. I'm going to get myself back together. I promise. Now I knew how Mom felt all this time. This was my dad, whether I liked it or not. The good news was that I was human. And Homo sapiens, in some ways, are much stronger than animals because we can choose. And I chose Billy. Dad sort of smiled at me. I'm not better. Probably won't be for a little while, he said. But I think Julie can take care of you, right? He held out his hand. It was tan and wrinkled. Dad didn't know anything about what Julie could do. I stretched my hand out toward his and grabbed it. It felt different. Not soft and warm like Billy's or Mom's. Just different. Maybe I could get used to it. Maybe. Did you go to the Four Corners? I asked him. He shook his head. To be honest, I don't remember. How long do you have to stay here? until I can see a judge. I imagined Dad sleeping in Officer B's jail cell, and it made me sort of sad to think of him alone, just like the male killer whale that swims to sea by himself, never to be included in the pod of his whale family. "Can you ever forgive me?" he asked. I turned to Officer B, who wasn't even trying to pretend to read the magazine anymore. He watched us like he was watching a movie, his eyebrows raised just a little. I thought of Tattoo Guy, the scars across his arm and leg, and what he said about surviving his motorcycle accident. He had said, "I was pretty lucky that day, and I know it." Tattoo Guy was right. Billy and me were lucky too, because we had survived, and still, we had each other. Dad waited for my answer. I picked up the water bottle from the table. The sun shone through the plastic, casting a rainbow of colors across the floor. "Maybe," I said. He was, like my real biological family. His blood ran through my veins. Maybe someday. I sort of smiled, and this time I didn't feel like I was pretending. One thing I knew for sure, it was time for everything to be real. I was through with faking it. Chapter 52. New pods can be golden. Julie was at the hospital when I got back with Officer B. She had a gallon Ziploc bag full of Guatemalan candy. "Here," she said, shoving the bag into my arms. Then she hugged me like she'd never let go. When she finally did, she sat on Pirate Doctor's couch, swinging her foot a million miles a second. But that didn't stop Billy from holding her hand the entire time. I sat on a chair a few feet away from her. We told her everything, and it was a lot. Sometimes facts can take a while, but I knew it would be even longer if we had to talk about how we felt. And the whole time she just listened, shaking her head every once in a while. She hardly said a word, just wiped tears from her eyes. When we finished, she pointed to the suitcase in the corner. When Billy and me opened it, it felt like Christmas. Things from home. Everything still smelled like our condo, and some things still smelled like Mom. When I tried on a pair of shorts and my SeaWorld t-shirt, they were too small. Julie asked, "Are you sure those aren't Billy's? The shorts were really too small." "I can't believe you've grown this much over the summer," she said, folding them and stacking them into a tidy pile. Julie swore I had grown 3 inches. But after everything that had happened with Dad, growing taller didn't seem that big a deal. If you could pry open my rib cage, I'm sure my heart looked different too. And heart growth is way more important. After Billy and me changed into our clothes, we went back into the lobby. Billy had on her golden smile and she sat right in between Julie and Pirate Doctor. They were still talking about medical missions and how they wanted to go on and help others. We were going back to San Diego with Julie, but I couldn't concentrate. When exactly did we get to go? And was Julie going to keep us forever and always? In some ways, it'd be hard to go back without the dream of a dad who could save me tucked into the pages of my notebook. But I guess now I didn't need saving. I just needed my sister and a pod. Someone nice and good who could take care of us because I couldn't manage everything as well as I thought I could. Nurse Doris walked into the room. "Stitches. Yeah. Stitches in room 1. Pirate Doctor looked up. "Oh, I'm sorry, Doris. You told me that already." He turned to us. "If you'll excuse me, I'll be right back." And he bumped into the doorframe as he walked out, which made Billy laugh. Julie turned to me. How lucky are we that he was able to help you girls?" I nodded. "I can't even begin to comprehend all that has been done for you." And I couldn't help but think we'd done a lot of the helping ourselves, too. "It's my fault," she said. "I should have never let you girls go, but I had no idea. Your mother told me very little about your dad. She never seemed to want to talk about what had happened between the two of them. She said it was in the past and she didn't want to think about it." "I don't want to think about it either," said Billy. "And when I got the call from the clinic that they needed someone to fill in for the medical mission to Guatemala, I just jumped on it. I called your dad and left him a voicemail, but he never called me back. I'm so sorry." And I could tell she was sorry, and I didn't blame her. Julie turned to me. "How are you doing?" "I'm okay," I said. She looked at me, her eyes all squinty. "Are you really okay? I mean both of you." "Yep." I brushed the hair out of my eyes. Billy nodded. "Still, I should have called again to check, but I was so busy. I figured you were having a great time, you know. No news is good news." Her voice trailed off. "Not always," I said. "Liberty took care of me," said Billy. "I know she did. She was amazing. You are one amazing girl, Liberty. You remind me of your mom." My heart bumped in my chest. "Your mom was one of the smartest people I knew." "Are we going to live with you?" interrupted Billy. It was the question I was too scared to ask, and right now I wanted an answer. Facts were always better than guessing. We'll have to figure that out with the courts and the judges and your dad. I have no idea if your dad has family, but you can't stay with him. Right now, you'll both stay with me, she said. Are you going to be our mom now? Billy asked. Julie stared out the window. Finally, she said, I never in my life thought I'd be a mother, but I guess. She didn't talk for a minute, then she smiled. Could you think of me as your youngish aunt? Besides, I could never replace your mom. Julie wasn't that young. She was even older than Mom. But what she said was true. No one could ever replace our mother. Billy whispered, We can add an aunt to our pod, right? What do you think? I asked. Billy nodded. What about Pirate Doctor? And Tattoo Guy and Roger? I asked Julie. Do you think we'll see them again? She looked like she was thinking hard for a second. Finally, she said, I'd really like to find a way to thank them. I'll talk to Officer Buck to see what we can do. In life, nothing was ever certain, but I could hope. I began. Maybe we could. Billy interrupted. I want ice cream. Julie said, I can probably manage that. She turned to me. What were you saying, Liberty? Nothing. Well, are you up for some ice cream? I think we have to stay out here for a few days to get things finalized with your custody, and your dad has a hearing. I have a hotel booked. We can take your stuff over as soon as Dr. Martinez discharges you. Then ice cream. I'm sure we can find some out here. How about it, Liberty? Is that what you want to do? No one had asked me what I wanted for a long time. I picked up my notebook and shoved it deep into the suitcase Julie had bought from our condo. Yes, yes, yes. Come on, Liberty, said Billy, pulling on my arm. Sure, I said, but something felt undone. I'd changed so much this summer that now I felt like a brand new Liberty species. Finally, I said, there's one thing I want to do before we go back to San Diego. Lay it on me, said Julie, and so I asked. And it sounded both logical and illogical all at the same time. But inside my heart, it felt perfect, like the two sides of my brain, instinct and logic, could finally agree. Chapter 53. Corners can be the most important pieces. It existed. The map said it did, but to see it with my own eyes was something entirely different. Four Corners Monument, Navajo Land, USA. A parking lot surrounded it. The marker looked like a gigantic compass buried in the ground, encircled by concrete. It glinted in the desert like a hot penny. Its long arms reached out north, south, east, and west, stretching invisible lines across the patched desert, making it known that this place existed. 4 places in one, just like magic. A small road had brought us here. Well, the road and the car Julie had driven for 7 hours had brought us here. Julie paid a fee and pulled into an almost empty parking lot. She said it'd be fun, educational even. I took the concrete steps one at a time. 4 Corners was where we headed when Dad left us. Where we were headed when Dad left us. It seemed to only make sense that if I could reach that destination, to just stand here, 4 places at the same time, then I knew everything would be all right. I walked forward and turned my head to the side so I could read the inscription. Words were placed equally on each quarter of the circle. In freedom, here, 4 states rest under God. The flags of Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico snapped in the wind, and then, as if the wind gave me super strength, I hopped, landing perfectly in the center of the circle. 4 places at once, defying the laws of science. Stubborn in its existence, like Billy and me. And Dad? I'd hope he'd get better, but it didn't matter so much anymore because I had Billy. I turned, looking for her. She was there with Julie, sitting in the shade, unpacking the lunch we bought at the grocery store, with way too much food, because Billy had to have everything, but Julie didn't care. Billy must have said something funny, because Julie laughed as she took a bite of her sandwich. Billy, I called. She waved, so did Julie. I just told Julie a Barbie joke, said Billy. And right then, at that exact moment, I just knew. I guess you could say it was instinct, mixed in with a little inspiration. Maybe it was Mom's soul cells, but I knew we were going to be okay, Billy and me. This place felt almost sacred, like if we stayed here long enough, all of us in the exact places, we might just stay shiny and golden forever. I looked up at the sky, little white sheep clouds. Fault lines crisscrossed my heart and my head and forged me back together. I was newer, stronger Liberty, and for now, that was enough.